Hey now, and how are you doing? Want to welcome you to the next episode of Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat. I know growing up they said don't trust the guy with two first names, but I'm going to tell you, Daniel, we're going to treat him because he is a leader in a way that you want to be led. He's going to teach us about leadership. He's going to teach us about so much. I can't wait to kind of contact and getting to know my friend Daniel a little bit better. How are you doing today, Daniel?
I'm good. I'm in a really good mood. I went out to a civic event this afternoon and saw a whole lot of people that I know, and that was fun. And got a friend in from out of town to kill some time this weekend, so we're gonna have a good time.
Okay. Out of town's always good. Out of town friends are good, but after 3 days, right? Fish
Send them home.
and guests need to
That's
leave.
right. That's it.
You can stay here. You can stay anywhere you want, but just not here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
All right. I'm glad you're doing well. And so, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I live in Columbia, South Carolina, which is where I grew up from third grade on. Off to college, a few hours away, came back, ran a business here from 1990 to 2013. Excuse me, 2003. So for 13 years. And moved to St. Louis, spent 10 years there, moved to Houston, spent 10 years there, got divorced when I was living in Houston, moved home to Columbia about 7.5 years ago, fall of 2016. And dad was in his 80s with cancer, and it was just time to be back home. So I came home and launched a business built around the fact that in business, people don't need more connections, they need better connections. But I've been self-employed officially 36 years, 50 if you start with the lemonade stand in first grade. So depends on how you want to do the math. But I've been filing a Schedule C tax return since 1988. And I say since then, the last few years, I went ahead and became an S Corp. So I filed a corporate tax return now. But I've been self-employed officially for a long time and really enjoy it.
Congratulations. So that's
Thanks.
really, as somebody who's just recently transitioned out of the corporate America life to the entrepreneur life full time. Wow, it's great to hear the stories that it really does work. And I'm starting to see no, and I'm starting to see the results for myself. You hear so many people struggling and how tough it is. While it is tough, but I guess if you know the right people and the right mindset, that's a big help.
And in different contexts, I've seen the phrase choose your heart, right? If you're in corporate, you've got a reasonably steady paycheck, although the recent layoffs, particularly in tech, would tell you otherwise. But
That's me.
so you got a steady paycheck, so that part's not hard, but you're dealing with other people's priorities and BS and office politics and the office bullying, the office incompetent, and the
Yep.
petty person in HR that doesn't understand human relations. And as an entrepreneur, you don't deal with any of that. The financial instability can be there, particularly when you're new and don't have your thing together. But yeah, yes, I get it. And I was just chuckling because as somebody who's been self-employed forever, right, I know it works. And a very important piece of perspective was shared with me about midway through my career. So I was already committed to being self-employed, but he said that he made the jump to being a sales rep, a straight commission sales rep. So he was with a company, but he was still technically self-employed. And the guy said to him, "How can you stand to work there not knowing how much you're going to get paid?" And he said, "How can you stand to work there knowing how much you're going to get paid?" And I've kept that with me as my own mental defense. I might not know how much I'm going to get paid, but there I know how little I would get paid, and I ain't doing
Right.
that.
And that's one of the conversations that I've had with myself, but also what I've been talking about when getting out of corporate America. They're like, okay, so how much did you give up to sell out your dream? Because unless you dreamt to be in position X, what did you do? And I've thought about it, and I got to tell you, there is some comfort level. I grew up with blue collar parents who I remember even changing my job from a really good law firm to being in corporate America in a corporation. And my grandfather, who was a butcher growing up, was like, "What are you doing? You have a good reputation. You have a good this. You have a baby who's just a couple of weeks old at that time." And I go, "I want to be home with my family." And that was one of my reasons. And while I took a pay cut, I also didn't have to work 70, 80, 90 hours a week. And
Yes. And if
at the
I'd ever
same
had kids, I might have made a very different series of choices. There's
Yeah,
no doubt.
and we also all have to make sure what choices we make and that we are also capable about planning. And I think that's when you're a leader, you have to look at not only the current circumstances, but a future. You have to
Mhm.
plan for a future.
I
And
think so.
why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you do? So we know you went to college and you've been an
Sure.
entrepreneur, which no, which is admirable because really think about I could think about what you've gone through and you could tell us about those experiences. right? All the downturns, the horrible downturns our country has seen, and still rode out the entrepreneur space. So I'd love you to just educate us a little bit about what you do, but also
Sure.
how we manage those downturns.
Yeah. And we all have egos, some healthier than others. Just simply my biography, I could spend a few hours on. I'm not going to do that to you or your listeners. But my journey was through official self-employment, right? Not counting the greeting cards door to door after the lemonade stand, et cetera, et cetera. Um, was the first three roles, first two of the first three roles, I was a 1099 rep, meaning I was an agent for somebody else. So I had another brand name, had some corporate structures behind me, resources. And so I was self-employed and on straight commission in every case, but I didn't build it from the ground up, right? I wasn't negotiating shipping rates. I wasn't dealing with mistyped orders, except to let home office know there's a date you missed an @ symbol on the email address or whatever the case may be. So I was still inside some corporate structures, but I had the freedom to make my own choices in that regard, mostly. And so it was 7 years ago when I moved back here to South Carolina that I came with a franchise model and then also created a separate S Corp to run adjacent to the franchise-based S Corp. And really a ton more freedom to do what I want. Some people would say as a franchisee, you don't, but this franchise agreement was written very loosely when I signed it 7 years ago, and I have quite a bit of freedom. But the current model, the business that I run, is based, as I said a moment ago, on the fact that in business, people don't need more connections, they need better connections. Better connections implies two things. It implies stronger connections with strategic connections. So strategic connection to me, of course, clearly customers, right? I.e. profit comes from revenue comes from customers, and customers come from prospects, but the best prospects come as referrals. So I help people. To me, a strategic connection is somebody that can be a key referral partner. Anybody can refer business to you if they encounter somebody and they feel comfortable enough with what you do and how you do it. But for example, if you're in the real estate business and you ask me for leads, I don't encounter any more than the average number of people that want to buy or sell a house. But if you talk to a mortgage lender or a divorce attorney or an estate attorney or a funeral home director, they encounter more people at a moment when a house sale might be part of what's going on in their world. If you're a moving company, a divorce attorney, right? If you're a salary negotiation coach like my client, John Gates, then maybe you team up with a resume writing coach, right? Or career advice coach. Not because you think that person's going to be your customer, but because their customers can be your customers if trust is built correctly. So the strategic connections part of this involves the brand name Network in Action. I'm a franchise holder for a brand called Network in Action. And I convene people in three categories: one, local, and two, digital. Locally, it's Main Street businesses, right? It's the real estate agent, the insurance agent, the plumber, the electrician, the home builder, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, right? If you're American and you know the nursery rooms, right? And then two are digital, and they're based on niche B2B businesses of different deal size. One, the average dealer commission is anywhere from 8,000 to probably 50,000 or more. And then the others, we're only dealing with people that have offers that are 100,000 to $1 million or more in terms of their offer. Meaning that you put people together that sell a $25,000 whatever, the people that with other people that are selling the same thing, their connections are the ones most likely to be abused. You're calling on the same size businesses, probably. Right. You're calling on the same title.
Same problems, same ability to. That's right. It. If you go in with a low end group and you're looking to sell $25,000, they're going to be like, "Oh my God, you're crazy! How could you do that?" Right. We do that because we have a different model. It's also that strategic thinking is like you were saying, where if you're a divorce attorney, yes, you need people who are divorced, but you also have resources to assist your client. Is just a bunch of references. Hey, maybe estate planning, maybe right. So many different ways where it starts split it up. But by having that strong network of real hard referrals, that's really what it comes down to. And,
right.
And it's like that in a business anyway, or in your personal life, is you got to strategically do things. If you want to be living in a life of wellness, you don't just go, okay, I'm living in a life of wellness. Let me go send a Planet Fitness or any of the other places. Hint, hint, I'll take a sponsorship from Planet Fitness for $10 a month. But the answer is that's not going to help you. Going to Planet Fitness is much better than actually just paying the membership. You got to do the actions and know the right people, the right connections. Use the
Right.
machine in there for doing what you need to do, not necessarily just going there to hang out and talk to cute girls, cute boys, or whatever. No girls, no boys. We're all adults here.
We're all
So
adults here. That's
easy
it.
to find.
Yeah, meaning if you're selling appointment setting services to a small business owner or an entrepreneur of some sort, and your what's the word I'm looking for? Not subscription, but retainer is a few $1,000s a month. There's a certain community of people you can help. The small business accountant, right? The tax prep pro, the small staffing or headhunter can work with those businesses. But if you're selling the average ticket of lawn care to corporate 500 customers, right? I know a guy that works for True Green Chem Lawn, and his only call list is the top 500 corporations in America. His average ticket is $20,000 worth of lawn care, right? What Jennifer Fry does in appointment setting for people is not what she's dealing with. Different size companies completely than this guy that's selling, $20,000 a month average ticket in lawn care. And so those people, they're nice, they might like each other, but they're not professionally situated to support each other with the right referrals.
Well, it's that alignment that we talk about when you're looking at it. And that's where I'd love to kind of add to this is the alignment, the leadership connection that you would have. If you want to align, yes, it would be really cool to meet, whoever you admire politically, in industry, but what are you going to say to them? Bill Gates, we'll just use that as a reference. If you got to sit in front of Bill Gates, what are you going to ask? How do you turn the computer on? That's probably not a good use of your time or his time. What would be something that you would suggest when that's really could be useful for people, not only in their personal life, because relationships and relationship building is really important, but also in their business?
I think I found a good way to phrase it recently. When you ask someone for an introduction, it's not because they know people you don't know. It's easy to find new people to meet. That's super easy. You ask people for an introduction because they have credibility that you don't have with people that you don't know. That's why you ask for an introduction. And what people miss, right? Because people join leads groups where they have a constant stream of prospects, sometimes suspects. Sure, they call them prospects or leads. But what they're not building is relationship, because those are roster based, right? They're expected to give a lead to the real estate agent, not because he or she is a good real estate agent, because you trust them, but because that's the real estate agent, right? And which is fine. It's a system that works for a lot of people, particularly businesses that aren't very good and can't afford to simply exist on their reputation, or don't want to take the time to know and be known. But if you choose to slow up and build not necessarily super deep, but authentic relationship with the right people, you can get better leads than you can from a leads group. And you have the added benefit of the fact that those people are now part of your core relationships, meaning you don't just go to them for referrals or introductions to prospects. You can go to them for advice about business. They can be your own little board of directors, as it were. These people know you well enough for you to go, hey, today was ugly. Can you meet me for a beer? Or today was ugly. Tell me something good that happened to you and I'll pretend it happened to me, and that'll pull me out of this slump. And you can't do that from a superficial or roster-based approach. You can't do that from the people. I go to happy hours for networking because I know what I'm doing, number one. And number two, because the people there don't know how to network. That's why they're still at the happy hours, because that's not the goal, is not to go forever. So I've got a stack of cards, right? But there's none of those people that I could email and go, hey, I'm having a tough day, let's talk about it. They'll be like, dude, I only met you once for a second. That's not going to happen. Yeah, the proof that people aren't building a network when they say they're networking is the fact that they have to keep doing it. It's called marketing by hand.
Yep. Networking is saying, I have somebody for you, Daniel. I have somebody for you, and I'd love to connect them with you. That's networking. I trust it.
Correct.
You built that, not just, oh, I know a guy, which is helpful also. Not to discount that, but there's your inner circle people, and then there's people who are in your circle.
And everybody's used their definitions. But as Suzanne Taylor King said, just because you're in their phone doesn't mean they'll answer their phone. And there's a guy that in one of my first companies, right? Not my company, but one of my first work experiences, the one I was at the longest in the early part of my career. There was a guy that was a superstar there when I was, but he went on to bigger and better things. And he out earns me at this point. And I really want to talk to this guy because number one, I feel like I've got some referrals for him, some active leads. But number two, I want him in one of my communities, my high dollar community. This guy does six-figure deals. I would love for him to be in the community for his own benefit, but because I charge a retainer and it would benefit me too.
Sure.
But I also know that I don't have the cred with him because he's moved past me. But his next door neighbor and best friend, who still works in the company with him and has gone on to be a superstar, I happened to mentor when he was brand new. I haven't talked to this guy on the phone in probably 5 years, but I called Mike and said, Mike, and the first thing he said is, Dan the man, the guy that taught me everything I know, which isn't true, but that's his still memory of me from 2010.
Okay.
2010 that I taught him everything he knows. That's his memory of me, right? So when I said, hey, Mike, and I'm not going to use the other guy's name in case anybody figures out who Mike is, I don't figure out who I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, of course.
I said, Mike, how do I approach Billy Bob? We'll make up a fictional name here. And he said, get your facts together, have a list of people you want to introduce him to by name so you can name drop. And when you're ready, let me know. I'll put you in a three-way text thread. Right? See, that's building a network. That's using a network that you've got. Because just because Billy Bob is in my phone and he would say hey to me on the street,
right,
doesn't mean he's going to answer his phone. But I can get Mike, who will answer the phone when I call, to turn Billy Bob into the same sort of guy that, because once Mike says to Billy Bob, I think it's worth your time to talk to Daniel, he'll answer the phone.
Sure. No, of course. And that's really what it's building, that credibility. Again, and even in your personal life, is those personal references really do count. It's not like I just know somebody. Don't just throw people at me and see who's going to stick. It's let's go find people. And that's why even with the podcast, you and I spoke for more than a half hour just to get to know each other a little bit. So I can say to the audience and also in the future, hey, not only do I know a guy, but I know the guy who's going to help you. In fact, I can now say at the end of the year, we're going to meet in person because I'm going to be speaking in Columbia, South Carolina. So when I come down, you're the guy that I'm going to.
Yay! I'm excited.
I always like to try to follow up on that because, and that's one of the reasons why I'm saying it is one, so it kind of filters into my brain and be like, you're down here. You're supposed to say hello to Bob and Daniel or Daniel and Bob. Let's really put that in the right order it's supposed to happen.
I don't care. You can put anywhere you want.
Again, training I'm a real trainer of I try to work on the words, and I even try to take the word.
Language is important. I do believe that's true. I think we're going to meet in person before that because we're going to be at the Connected Leaders Academy event in a few weeks.
Yeah, right? I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, so we'll definitely meet and sit down a little while. Are you speaking at that event or you're just showing up?
My role will not be speaker, but I'm doing more than just showing up, and I'll leave it at that until Jose and I work out the details. But
okay.
I'm not one of the content providers, but I'm one of the people that I believe if Jose and I finish the negotiations, I'll be there to help create connection because people get together for three reasons: content, connection, and community. And the content is the easy part. Now you have to pick the right people, but the world is full of quality people that can speak at an event, right? And he's asked me to focus on the connection part.
Yeah, because I'm speaking there, and actually by the time this comes out, it'll be after the CLA. Yeah, it definitely will be. It's only a month away. Actually,
right. So we're not talking about the deets at this point. So you might have to edit out the part where I said I'll be on stage because if Jose decides otherwise, I won't be on stage.
Okay, well,
hopefully I will have been. Hopefully I will have been.
It's always being in the room where it happens, right? Let's the new catchphrase, but it really is important by being in the room, and that's why even during the pandemic, I said I still miss the hand to hand, and not a battle, but the hand to hand when you can look somebody in the eye and talk to them. Because while you could do some of that on video, you could also not see a lot of things as well.
I think it's true, but I do believe that the upside of video is that it's allowed us to select from a larger pool, meaning, and you were talking about being in a relationship and being giving, and Adam Grant, that wrote a really good book, he wrote several really good books, but the book I'm thinking of, Adam Grant, wrote Give and Take. And in the first chapter, he makes a point that surprised even me in his ability to articulate it. I had a gut feeling this was true, and I'd been coaching that this was true, but Suzanne Taylor King told me to read the book because we were talking about this concept. He's got the proof. And in the book, he talks about the fact, in the first chapter even, that you can look at people's networking, and I always put air quotes around the word networking, right? You can look at people's networking styles and pretty quickly sort them into the category of giver, taker, or matcher. And I won't go into any further depth than that because whatever you understand from that is enough for this conversation, right? I don't have to give or take or match. And then you can also look at people's long-term success over their careers, 20, 30 years. And if you stratify it, high, medium, low, at the highest levels of success, which of the three categories is most likely to be there? A giver, a taker, or a matcher at the highest levels?
A giver.
A giver. At the lowest levels, which of the three categories is most likely to be there?
A taker.
A giver.
Huh.
Because they're giving wrong.
Okay.
Now, we are all God's children. We all have value on this planet. But in a business setting, some people are positioned to support you and be supported by you differently than other people are. Meaning, as much as I think of Janet Reynolds, the real estate agent, who's a personal friend of mine, and we've known each other for years, her time is not best professionally spent hanging out with me because I don't encounter any more than the other men and women walking down the street of people that need to buy or sell a home. But a mortgage lender, a divorce attorney, a funeral home director, right? All these people have a higher incidence of people that they encounter that have needs that include buying or selling a house, right? So professionally, her time is better spent with other people. Now, if she wants to invite me and my wife to her and her husband's late party, great. If they want to come for my poker night, great. Personally, that's a good use of our time. But professionally, you have to be particular about who and where you give because there's only so much time to give.
Correct.
And so you need to give to the people that can give back, not because of a spirit of reciprocity, but because of a spirit of, I've only got this much time on the planet. I'm going to help the most people. And so I'm going to hang out with the David Chemetsky's of the world who can help me simply by helping me get the message out, right? That I serve people in this way because you're amplifying my message. And so I choose to hang out with you as opposed to whatever else it was I could have been doing this afternoon.
Yeah, no, makes a lot of sense. It becomes a mindset in terms of how you run your business and how you run your life. Again, when you're hanging out with people that maybe aren't supporting your mission and they're nice people, that doesn't mean you can't, oh, I'm leaving because Dave shows up. Some people do. It's, but it's also, oh, I like when Dave, I don't have to, he doesn't have to be inner circle, but it's a good piece when, hey, when Dave comes, we talk about X, Y, and Z. And I like those conversations.
And by the way, David, if you live in a world where nobody leaves the room when you show up, then you're not living authentically.
Yeah.
Unless your authentic self is a people pleaser and you have no real personality. Peter Sellers would say over and over, there's nothing behind here. I am only my characters. This guy had some real trauma. The actor, Peter Sellers, he had some real trauma as a child. And he said, there's nobody behind the eyes. I'm only my characters. You don't want to be that guy. People that leave the room when I show up, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, they're not my people. That's what I've started is talking to people. Then they're not your people.
Which
you
is
don't like
fine.
the way I bring it, talk about it, and we could go anywhere about talking sports. It doesn't even have to be about business. If you don't like it, I understand that, respect that. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
As somebody came to me not long ago on the spirit of authenticity, and he said, Dan, I need to tell you something, and I owe you an apology. And his name is Thad, but he's a doctor, and he likes for people to use his title. And he comes from a ethnography that's not typically PhDs. So I'm going to happy to use his title. It means a lot to him and his community. Dr. Thad, I don't think you owe me an apology. I'm not aware of anything that you owe me an apology for. But if you feel like you have something you want to tell me and you want to give me an apology, I'm here to listen. I'm all ears. But I said, I just want you to know I carry no ill will in this moment. He said, fair enough. You wouldn't know what I was talking about. He said, when I first met you, I thought you were a real jerk. He used a different word, but we'll go with jerk. But the longer, he said, a few years ago, he said, but the longer I got to know you, the more I realized that you're the real deal. Okay. And when he said, when I met you a few years ago, I started chuckling. He goes, what? I said, oh, I know how the story ends. He goes, do you really? I said, you're not the first person that's ever told me that, but go ahead, because it'll make you feel better. So he said, I need to apologize for judging you the way I did. I was wrong. Hey, you're a good guy. And I said, apology accepted, because I don't want to reject what he's offered me. But I said, you don't need to, because I was who I was. And if that's the label you put on me, then that's fine too. I said, for the record, Dr. Thad, not only do I have more than one story like that, I have plenty that run in the other direction. Hey, Dan, when I first met you, I thought you were pretty nice, but now not so much. And I'm okay with that too, because I show up authentically. And by the way, just as a quick note, I didn't do anything except I once asked him to tell me, I said, I need to go to lunch with you because I don't know your story and I need to understand your experiences as a minority in America. And
Mhm.
all I did was let him talk to me and tell me, and I say all I did, it wasn't superficial. I didn't mean it. Watch, I can get Dr. Thad on my side by acting like I care. I cared. But that's all I did. I negated several years worth of his standoffishness to me by spending 45 minutes at lunch with him one day, letting him tell me his story.
Yeah, no, and that's what most people want, and then you have that
Mhm.
conversation because you get to know people. This again, when we go back to that, when you trust somebody, that's the real conversation. So I'm sure right now you still might not be best friends, or maybe you are, but you called him, or vice versa, you both would answer that phone call because of that extra relationship. Having those heart to heart conversations and understandings are so important.
And on the other side of that, I said, I believe my community that meets here locally would be in service to you. And he said, not sure I can make the commitment, but he said, give me a minute. And he got a friend of his, KJ, that's in the same industry. They call me on the phone, and KJ says, I'm in. I need to do this. So yeah, and I didn't do it because I thought I would get money from Dr. Thad or his connections at some point. I didn't do it. I did it because I really wanted to understand his story. But that quickly, he was able to go, and let me see how I can support you in exchange. And people miss that it doesn't take a lot. You do have to build that trust, but it's not, we're not proposing marriage here, right? It doesn't take months and months and months to utter the word I love you, and then months and months and months to decide we're going to do this forever, right? That's not what we're talking about here. A few 20 to 30-minute conversations, if you ask and share the right information, should position you to have plenty of trust with plenty of people.
Okay. And that is the way to go. That's really, and by being your most authentic self. I think when we go back, that's why, again, you and I are probably very similar in that. In fact, we are similar because I have some of my oldest friends were like, man, I wanted to put you down. I wanted to beat you. I was just with my cousin recently. It's my godfather's sons, but we call each other
Yeah,
cousins.
guys. Yeah,
And he's, dude, you don't know how many times I want to plant you. And then I'm like, I do because we grew up together. So there was times you get that. And then
yeah.
one of my best friends who passed away recently, at the beginning, he hated me. He actually, the thought of even being near me
Mm-hmm.
repulsed him. We were working together, and he made sure that everybody was like, "I can't be on the team with Dave. I can't, yeah, keep me as far as away." And then he became one of my dearest friends. Where I took
Yep.
care of his mom after he passed. So
Beautiful.
it's funny, but if you stay who you are, people will see past and not forgetting about what you do. So I've apologized a million times when I realize my behavior is not what I expect it to be
Right.
or
Now,
what my intentions are, how it's because we all walk through our glasses of our intentions. My intentions are good, but why didn't you understand that, Daniel? I'm like,
yeah,
okay, but maybe if you said
I
it differently.
had so many conversations with people, and 2 points real fast. It's great that we both have stories of people that kind of turned the corner and we became closer to at some level.
Yep.
Let's not make sure that anybody thinks the lesson is to keep hanging out with people where you don't feel the chemistry,
Right.
trying to force something that's not there. Meaning, just keep being your authentic self and let them come back around. We're not talking about chasing anybody, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
right.
No,
So if the
of
chemistry's
course
not
not.
there, right, don't
Don't
force it.
chase. I don't care how
Right,
perceived high or where you are. And no, you shouldn't be
right.
chasing
So
anybody. You can put
yeah,
out the energy and that's it, but be yourself. That's one of the things we always talk about here. Authenticity, right? That's the bat. Being authentic today. It really is so important to be authentic because people go, Dave, you're the same guy on Facebook than you are in person. And I go, I'm sorry.
yeah.
But of the matter is, you know what you're getting. So even in
That's
my personal
nice.
life, I'm gonna say things that are a little weird. I even will say it wrong, but then when I catch myself, I'm like, oh, I probably didn't mean it to sound like that. Sorry. But and that's what people appreciate, that authenticity.
Sure. And just to touch on what you said about saying it the wrong way or leaving the wrong impression, opposite of what you meant. This is a small metaphor that will help so many people, myself included. I try to remember this. Do you realize that in some cultures, it's considered extremely rude to clean your plate? Because the implication is you weren't provided enough food, right? That the host had shortcomings. In some cultures, it's rude not to clean your plate because it implies the food was not to your liking. And neither one of those people is right. But my point is, when you say somebody did something that offended me, was the offense in what they did or in the way you translated it? Because they can be coming from a setting a culture or maybe just their own personal experience that says this is the way you show respect to somebody. I had that happen with someone who's now a close friend of both me and my wife, but she and I were personal friends back when we were both single and getting to know each other better. And she said, you did this thing at the event last night and it felt very intentional and it made me feel disrespected. And I said, I did the thing at the event last night very intentionally to show you respect. And she said, what? And I said, that's what I just said to myself when you told me what you told me. I was doing everything I could to show you respect. And it's killing me to think that I showed you disrespect because I had no intention of that. And she said, this is weird to me to hear you say that the opposite. And I said, it's weird for me to hear you say the opposite. She said, okay, this helps. We can, that we can still be friends now that I know what your heart was. And I said, clearly. And now I can be sensitive to the fact that you receive things differently than I mean them. And we need to just talk about that.
Yeah,
You know?
no, and communication is so important.
Yeah, it's hard.
That's really where the trust comes from, the communication. Because if I didn't understand things, it's better to say, hey, Dave, did you really mean that? And instead of what that is, let's define what that is. And that it's a scary thing. A lot of people don't do that. And I've done this actually a couple of times in the past week where somebody said something. I'm like, this is how I'm hearing it. And it became one of the best. Actually, with my partner, we were having a board meeting for my charity, and we're talking, and he's this is, and I go, okay, hold on. And in my head, I'm like, it's frustrating me. What can I do differently? And I asked the question a little bit different. I go, what are you looking for? He was able to then identify what it was feeling like for him and how he wanted to solve the problem. So I wasn't trying to modify his behavior. I wasn't trying to modify my behavior other than being a little more active listening in what he's saying rather than feeling attacked that things aren't getting done and we don't have deadlines. I'm like, okay, what could we do differently? And guess what? Now you have a homework assignment. So, I don't want to, I always talk about leadership as delegating. It's not that I'm doing it all and I get to manage it. I'm not a maestro, but we're on this thing together. We're on the boat together. We better either row or the same way, or if we're
Yeah.
rowing the opposite ways, we're in a little bit of trouble. So I think that's also really valuable when you're able to have those communications again in a relationship, personal relationship, as well as a business relationship. And that's where some of the networking really doesn't work.
Right.
They hear what they want to hear, or they're putting up a guard. Oh, this guy's going to pitch me. And, instead of just saying, hey, look, this is what I do. It's not who I am. When it
Right.
becomes who you are, that's even better. And that's where I do some of my work on the branding side is who you are should be who you are in your business as well as just
Right.
showing up.
Because the disconnect creates mistrust. They don't know which part of you is the marketing and which part of you is the real authentic self. And this is the importance, right? Because when the disconnects come, but you already have some trust built, right? Then you can weather that and you have the trust, the depth, the connection enough to go, hey, David, that hurt my feelings. Is that what you meant to say? Yes. Okay. Did you mean to hurt my feelings or did you mean I need to course correct? No, Dan, I think you're showing up badly to the rest of the world. Oh, so you think I need to course correct? David, let's talk about that. That's different. But if you hurt my feelings and we're just two ships passing the night, forget it. And here's another part of network that relates to trust. And one of the two people in the story I'm about to tell, one was the young woman that I was talking about a moment ago. She had a service. She was one of my clients professionally, and one of my other clients needed her service. And I won't use the names because I don't know who's going to see this, right? But Susie Q and Jane Doe, right? Susie Q and Jane Doe. Okay. So I introduced them to each other and they set a lunch appointment and I knew it was coming up soon. So a couple of weeks later, I checked in with one of the two and I said, how'd the lunch appointment go? And she goes, she stood me up. And I said, did you call her or text her? No, if she wants to see me, she'll be there. I said, she knows how to reach me. I'm like, okay, I don't know that I would do it that way, but okay. Then I went to the other person. I said, hey, so what about that appointment with Susie Q? I didn't act like I knew that she stood me up. I said, did you call her or text her? No, if she wants to meet me, she'll see me. She knows how to reach me. I said, I think you ought to call. No. And I went back to the first one. I think you ought to call. No. And I don't know which one. I can't remember which one I finally convinced to call the other one. I said, I know things you don't know. You need to call the other person. And one was standing inside the restaurant door waiting for the person, and the other was standing outside the restaurant door waiting on the person. Now, to me, it's absolutely bizarre that in real time, you weren't like, I'm here, where are you?
Yeah, I've heard that stuff like that, and I'm like, I'm always walking in and out because I'm always an early person.
Or calling or texting or whatever.
Yeah.
But at any rate, and we can laugh about their fragile ego. And if she wanted to meet with me, she'd have been there. She knows how to call me. If she knows she stood me up, we can laugh about that. But the trust wasn't there yet. It was the fact that I had trust with both of them and could ask, how did that go? And when I heard a very surprising answer for both of them, I'm like, it might not be as simple as you think it is. One of y'all's got to call the other because this is going to be.
I want to be a fly on the wall.
And the fact that they were able to, the fact that each of them had trust with me enabled me to put it back together. Meaning, I get that they hadn't built the trust yet. I think I would have behaved differently anyway. I like to think I would have, but I get that they hadn't built the trust yet to overcome that mistake in thinking that one stood the other up. But because I could mediate that in the moment. Now, am I going to mediate that relationship for the rest of my life? No, because then it's not their relationship. It's my relationship, right. Each of them. But that's the cool part of a network. I've had people say to me, Fred didn't get back to me. And I go, did you message you on LinkedIn? And they go, yeah. I go, okay, that's a bad idea. Because he doesn't check LinkedIn. They go, oh, how should I get in touch with him? I'm like, here, let me put you in a text thread. Right. But I know that about the other person that they wouldn't know and couldn't know because they haven't connected yet. So the great thing about having a network is that when something goes squirrely or doesn't go the way you think it would, you've got somebody that's got trust in both directions that you can use to go, do you know something I don't know? Yeah, her mother died. She had to leave town for 2 weeks. Oh, that explains why I haven't heard back from her.
I know we've taken up a lot of your time, and I don't want to take up much more. But what could you leave us with a gem? You've left with a lot of gems, but on how to build trust when you do meet somebody who would be a good client or a good partner, and really
Sure.
And of course, I'm talking about a business partner.
Right. Yeah. No, I understand where you're getting at. And I will. And I'll preface the answer with the supposed story. I'm sure it's made up. That Arnold Palmer once had a sign on his wall and it said, 1 golf lesson, $1,000, 10 golf lessons, $1,000. And somebody said, what's that about? He said, if you think you're going to learn everything there is to know about golf in 1 lesson, you're going to pay for the privilege. So if we can go into this with the notion that, yes, I can give you a tip. Yes, I can give you a tool. This is not the only tool that you need, right? If you need to get with me later, we'll make sure that my information's in there. This is not a sales pitch for Daniel Andrews or anything like that. But I will say this, if you're out and doing what you call networking and you're not seeing consistent quality, qualified referrals, 60 or more per year from your networking, then you might want to engage with me because I can fix that in 6 months. Okay.
I'm going to write that.
Okay.
Those are some powerful numbers.
That if you're not getting 60 or more quality, qualified, and those are 2 different words, yep. Warm introductions, not leads on a piece of paper, not prospects, warm introductions. You're not getting 60 per year or more, then you're doing it wrong. Okay, meaning this tip will help, but it's not going to it's not going to take you from 0 to 60, right? Sure. But this is one of the things that you can do. One of the things that you can do is ask professionally based questions. Way too often we go in and we ask questions about how about them Gamecocks, right? The lady gets the female at this moment in time. Y'all won't know or care when it goes by. The women's basketball team for the University of South Carolina is looking really good, right? Hey, did you lose money in the Super Bowl? What did you do for St. Patrick's Day? How's your mom, David? I heard she wasn't doing well. Whatever. Those are all legitimate questions, but they do not move the professional conversation forward. Sure. So ask questions, and I don't mean grill people on their business, but ask them questions like, how did you decide to do what you do? How scary was it when you became an entrepreneur, right? What was the moment when you realized this is what I want to do for a living, at least for the next little while? Tell me about an experience with a client, customer, or vendor where you said, this is why I do what I do. It create this feeling in other people is beautiful. Those are questions that are personal, but they're professional at the same time. Sure. I want to know about you, David, but I want to know how you bring David Chemetsky to work, not how you show up for your family. That doesn't tell me anything about whether or not you belong in my circle. Here's one that will absolutely surprise people. And I love giving ones that people think will be true and turn out not to be true, or the reverse of what they think would be the case. If you want someone to trust you, ask for their opinion or advice on something in their realm.
Yeah.
Because if I ask you for advice, David, clearly I'm a wise person because I came to you and you're the expert.
There you go.
Therefore, I'm smart enough to be trusted because I am willing to admit when I don't know something, and I'm wise enough to know who the right person to answer the question is. So if you want to build trust, ask for advice. If you want to build trust, don't do people a favor, ask for a small favor.
Yep.
Because who do you
Yep.
do favors for? People you know well. So if you did me a favor, we must be pretty well connected. Here's another reason that works. And don't be abusive. Hey, Dave, how about you pick up lunch this time, right? Don't be abusive. But here's the key. If I do you a favor, David, in order to win your favor, you now owe me. And in the back of your mind, you're like, Dan's a good guy, but something about him makes me nervous because you don't know when I'm going to go, hey, Dave, I left my wallet at home. Can you pick up lunch this time? You remember you owe me one, right? But if I get you to do me a favor, in the back of your mind, you're like, Dan owes me one. One day I'm going to leave my wallet at home by mistake and he's going to get me covered, right? And you love hanging out with me because I owe you one. It's very subtle, but people mistake those things all the time. Don't manipulate people, but understand how human nature works.
Well, right. We're humans. Let's be really honest. We're humans in the experiences. That's what we really talked a lot about. Even though there's a business take to a lot of this, it applies the same thing in your life. Not the business isn't your life. It's really when you're in a life. So you could pay for lunch
Yes.
for a friend, not necessarily, but that's how you build it by showing up. And when you show up in somebody's life, that's why when you're talking in a business sense and looking for an expert, that really is, you're asking, one, you're also giving me the respect that, hey, maybe I know what I'm talking about. And then making those judgments by asking for the advice. I thought that was great. That was a great piece of advice. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. Thank you. So before we leave, I would
Yeah,
love to, how could people contact you to
sure.
get more of these gems and golden nuggets?
Absolutely. I'll fill you in. And if you have a niche B2B offer and you think you might want to hang out in a community of people that do deals at the 10,000, 50,000, $100,000, $1 million level, I'd love to hear from you and we can interview each other and see if you'd be a good fit. If you have plenty of people to work and deal with, right? If you're surrounded by people or if you have a one on every corner street, one on every street corner business model, but you want to know how to build effective relationships, I do have a 90-day program where we work together for 90 days and I show you the skills that it takes to build trust with the right people rapidly but authentically and turn yourself into a position where you get 60 or more quality qualified referrals. So if those sound of interest to you, I would encourage you to get in touch with me. I just give out my phone number. These people don't want to go to your website, I have one, and research you. All that's there is my testimonials. I want to do you have some literature you can send? Do you have a sample program I can sign up for and get a newsletter for you every day for the rest of my life until I lose my mind? No, I don't. My phone number is 803-361-6825. And if this feels right to you and you're like, I want to do it that way, then call me. And if you're like, I'm not sure I want to call him, don't call me. But my phone number is 803-361-6825. Now, if you call or text me, please be prepared to say, I watched the David Chemetsky show, right? I want information about, and my name is, right? Because just because you text me out of the blue, I think you're one of those Asian scammers, right? You know, how are you doing today? Text 4 or 5 times a day. So make sure you identify who you are and where we encountered each other. In this case, you heard about me on David Chemetsky's show, right? And that you want to hear about the ninja network building skills. Just say ninja. Your name, David's name, the word ninja, and the phrase call me, and I'll get in touch with you as soon as I can.
That sounds awesome. And thank you so much. And this is why we need to always trust everybody when we get to meet them, especially Daniel Andrews. Thank you so much
I'm excited to be here.
for your time. Everybody else, as always, wishing you peace and love in your life. And when you're bringing it back to hit your sweet spot, make sure you swing away. Thank you so much.